welcome to your National Gallery of Canada, one of our Saturday virtual tour that we organize every week. 3 p.m. it's in English and 1 p.m. it's in French. My name is Serge Belay. I'm Senior Exhibition Manager at the National Gallery. I've been doing that for 11 years, and today I've been invited to talk to you about some artworks that are part of the badakone exhibition, which is the exhibition about contemporary international indigenous artists that has opened last November here at the gallery. Mylan is behind the camera and she's following us, and Cathy is somewhere and checking the questions or comments that I'll be happy to answer. So badakone is actually the sequel of an exhibition. So badakone means continuous fire, and it's a sequel of the exhibition that was presented here at the gallery, Sakahan, 7 years ago, which was, I think it means light the fire. And the team of curators, Greg Hill, Christine Lalonde, working with Rachel Dickinson and Crystal Migwen, all from the Indigenous department, put together these extraordinary exhibitions, working with a team of other curators, and really looked to work with some artists all over the world and bring them here. So I was in charge of managing the whole production of the artworks within the public spaces. My colleague Linda Hall did the whole coordination for the exhibition spaces. It's an extraordinary exhibition. There's close to 70 artists. They come from 16 countries, 40 indigenous nations. And there's three themes in the exhibition. And I have my notes. Relatedness, continuity, and activation. And I think what we're going to see today is how these concepts emerge in the different spaces. So what I want to talk about is from the perspective of an exhibition manager, not from a curator perspective, because this is not my expertise, it's not my training. So as the exhibition manager, what do? It's almost like a producer role where we talk with the curators who introduce us to the artist, and then we talk with the artist curators, with the whole team here, the technical team, the finance department, the conservation department, the engineers, the building people, and then we get to install this absolutely extraordinary library by Joar Nango. Joar Nango is a Sami artist who lives in Tromsø, Norway. He's an artist as an architect, and I think you can. So it's called the Sami Architectural Library, and the library, well, you see, it's all these books, and it's these books about all these books about indigeneity, about Sami architecture, about feminism. But he's also an architect, so we offered this space to Joar, the main entrance, which is quite massive. And well, to be honest, this space and this architecture that he built did not exist until 3 weeks before the opening of the exhibition. So a lot of conversation between David Gauchard, the designer at the gallery, worked with him. Guy Graton from Technical Services spent 3 weeks, 9 and days. They were all with a van and with Joar, with Havar, who's one of his assistants who flew from Tromsø with him, who's also an architect. And everything you see are, mostly recuperated elements. This stairs was coming from a house that was going to be demolished, and it was on sale. So we went to get these staircases and made sure it fitted the space. Joar is also an artist about collaboration with different practices, and this that looks like a nest, it's actually the part of willow trees that was used to actually do the tanning of the moose hide. And the moose hide, Mylan is going to show it to you. The moose hide is here. And how did we get the moose hide? Well, Jamie Morse, who's working at the education department, bumped into her one day at the gallery and said, Jamie, I'm asked to find some moose hide. I mean, did I ever know I would have to source this type of material in my career? And I did, and how am I going to do that? I said, no problem, I'm going to reach out to my community. We have hunters who are hunting, to feed their family, and we'll ask them to actually sell the hide for you. And it happened so quickly, it was unbelievable. I mean, before we knew it, we had 3 hides, and then you organized these tanning events and community events outside the gallery. And, we worked with Gracie Jerome, who is from Beaver Lake in Ontario, who brought her savoir expertise of how to tan hides, and she worked with Katarina Spitkan, another Sami artist, who did some hiding, and Katarina had this extraordinary, once she had done the tanning with the hide, she prepared these extraordinary bags, different shapes and that are here to present the books, which all, by the way, are coming from yours personal library. And so it's a library, so you can come here, you can browse the books. And so this is an example of the collaboration, of the type of work that yours doing by bringing so many people together. I want us to go upstairs, Mylan.
Yes.
To also talk about how Yara was able to inhabit this space. He gave it some scale by elevating the space, by creating this room upstairs. And then something quite extraordinary happened when we go up. And I follow you. And all this was installed in a couple of, in 2 weeks and a half. We had engineers, we had technicians, we had contractors building everything, checking everything, that everything was up to code, everything was working. So here we're in this space, and we still have the natural light from, which is one of the characteristic of this amazing building by Moshe Safdie, is this natural light everywhere. And then when you turn, so you go up, and there's different books. You created these different bookshelves, and there's this different elements. And here you have this amazing framed view, vertical view, on a view which actually no one has seen for years at the gallery. I think the only people who saw it were people changing the light bulbs or working on the roof. The visitors never see this kind of elevated view of the rest of the building. And from here, you see on the ramp, on the granite, there's these words, and this is the word by Joy Arkan that we're going to see in a minute. And then in the Great Hall at the end, you have the work Tepkik by Jordan Bennett. So let's go and see all that.
There's also some animal skins here.
Animal skins, and there's one interesting one here, which is actually a roadkill that Jor had found, and then that was tanned here and installed here. Very interestingly enough, actually, in the Canadian galleries, there's a painting by Paul Kane, where there's some depiction of some hunters, Mi'kmaq hunters, and there's some animals that are skinned and are presented the same way. And I showed these to Yor when he was here. He thought it was really interesting. These are some leftovers of the space that Katarina used to sew, to do these different objects. This was borrowed to our conservation lab, and Hensley Walton, the paper conservation, worked on actually binding some books with Katarina. So it was a very collaborative project where everybody was involved. And Yor is very good at that, actually.
I'm just going to put a label here.
Yes.
So in case some of you might have missed the introduction, this is the piece here by Yor Nango, a Sami artist, and a little bit more about this piece. Okay. And this is the
And
view.
again, yes, from here, I mean, you can see the presence of the horizontal branches above actually were cut from, the trees were cut from Christine Lalonde, one of the creators, from her home, and she invited Dior and Havard, and they came, and so, and then, you know, the black, basically it's Havard working on the branches, on the trunks for days with the skin of one of the animals that you see here. I think it was a skunk.
Oh, wow.
Actually. And it gives this amazing, you know, and then while he burned the tree, so it was black, and then he gave him this amazing, very matte texture, very beautiful, by, you know, brushing it with this skunk skin for days and days and days. And so there's this, you know, there's this thing of like super sophistication of finish and using raw material, and I think that's and then getting everybody to work together, and that's what of yours. That's what it does. So
Also on the theme of badakone, interconnectedness.
yes. So I think the interconnectedness happened on so many levels. So it happened during these community events that happened here, where there was the tanning work, where the work of the book binding, and
So just out
then
here.
also the connection between all the artists, because when we were installing that, I mean, not all of the 60 artists were on site, even though close to 60 came for the opening. But for the installation, well, we worked mostly with the one who had to build their work here. So Joy Arcan came here to the gallery, and her piece, Ote Mika Nok, is a piece around the language. And Joy is a Cree artist, and I had to check just the proper, so the text is in language called Neyaweni, plain Cree, or white dialect. So you see, she came here and she worked with a designer. She worked with Geneviève Cauchy a lot to kind of find the proper spacing of the word, to find the proper proportions, and also to decide to use this very strong, almost, you know, fluorescent colors on the floor. Something interesting is she had this work previously presented at the gallery during the Sobi Awards a couple of years ago, and that was installed on the staircases from the Rotunda to the European spaces. And what's interesting, and I didn't get a chance to talk with Joy about it, is, you know, how does she choose a space to present some works? And this work is about language, about communication, and then they're displayed in spaces that are about linking spaces between each other. So the ramp is between, you know, the main entrance, the Great Hall, it takes you to the exhibition galleries. The staircases also are kind of a communication thing, and, you know, it's a staircase. So that's an interesting thing. And that takes us, and it's visible. What's interesting, it's actually quite interesting when you look back. In any direction, we don't know what it means because there's no translation. We kind of put in the position of people whose languages were taken from them and who are now getting back their language and getting, you know, it's about all this importance of language and cultural identity and not losing that.
This one's probably the easiest to see because it's not so bright.
Yes, and it's interesting because actually it feels, you know, we asked Joy how she was feeling about the fact that we were walking on the artwork. You know, that was a bit, is that okay? And it was totally okay for her. And but it's interesting to see how the public interact with it. When I work with it, I tend to kind of walk in between letters or something.
Yes, it's true.
You know, you go like that. You don't. But
You don't
you
necessarily
know,
wanna
step
walk
on
on
it.
the
It's
vinyl.
okay. But it's interesting how, you know, suddenly there's something on the ground,
People are
You
interacting
know-
with the space differently.
and you know it's art, and so you know, pay attention to it. Here's the label. Yeah.
Label text here. Jyoti Arkan. And we're on to our next piece. So this piece is suspended.
This piece is suspended, and this is a work by Jordan Bennett. It's called Tech Kick, which means night, and it was a piece that existed already, and it was presented in Toronto and New York. And we were extremely lucky because actually it fitted exactly the space. And I mean, in terms of production, it was quite an organization just because of the pure scale of it. It's quite big. So we worked with this company. It was actually more. Usually, is doing rock stages. And when they came here, actually they had installed a Fleetwood Mac concert stage, and also the week previous they had done the stage for Michelle Obama. So it's this type of team that goes, and they were able actually to work overnight, over 2 nights, because we installed this while we were still open to the public. So the way you were doing it, they arrived after we closed 5 p.m., installed, mount all the beams, motors are suspended, all the connections are accepted by engineers, and then the beam has, you installed 50 light projectors, all these cables to suspend the artwork. The morning, our team from conservation arrives and pack the artwork, suspend all the artworks, and then Sunday morning, everything is raised before 10 a.m. when the public arrives. And the last Sunday night, then they put things down again and do the final touch, and then we do the lighting for all the night. And here it is, absolutely magnificent, absolutely, taking the space in a very beautiful way, occupying the space in a beautiful way. All this pattern that Jordan is using, inspired by some traditional quill work and some ancient petroglyph. And then the stars that are so popular with the kids, because it's almost like you could touch them. Mm-hmm. They bring the sense of, they kind of change the scale of the space, and if you photograph them with flash, they totally transcend the image because they're made of this reflective material.
We have a comment from Jordan Bennett.
Hi, Jordan.
They say it was a full-on install. So much fun. Good team.
Yeah, it was. I would say the whole installs were full on, and I cannot thank enough Jordan, all the artists we worked with, for their sense of teamwork. I mean, mm-hmm. Because that's one thing about, you do your art, but when you work with this type of scale, you need to be able to work with a team and get the team, totally support you and get the things happening. And you need to be a special person for that, to be able to handle all this. So thanks Jordan. Mm-hmm. It's great. We're going to see another work that actually existed before the exhibition. It was acquired in 2018 by the gallery, and it's a work by Rebecca Belmore, Anishinaabe artist, and it's called Binijai Onji, From Inside. And my understanding is, so I was not involved in the production or not even too much installation. She did this in marble while she was in Athens. And in Athens, where, in the midst of this refugee crisis, there's an art biennale or art exhibition, and she's involved. So she basically takes the shape of a refugee tent, and then instead of this very fragile polyester material, she's using marble from quarries where this marble was used, centuries ago to build the Parthenon. And she renders the fold of the fabric in a super amazing neoclassical way. So it's a whole interesting, complex encounters between this traditional material and rendering of épicé, and then this very harsh reality of the refugee crisis and the tent and these sparks that are created for them to leave, even though, I mean, you know, I don't think to leave is a proper term, and I don't think it's going to survive. But quite an amazing introduction to the other part of the exhibition.
Let's go to the panel text here. Okay, onwards.
So today we really stick to the public spaces. That's why we're not going inside behind the doors of the exhibition itself. So as I was saying, many works did not exist 6 months before the opening. The work we're going to see did not exist 10 days before the opening. These incredible murals by 3 artists from the Tribal Women Art Cooperative, which is based in Hazaribagh, India, in the east of India. And the 3 artists are Philomena Imam, Yvonne Iman, and Putli Ganju. And they came here with Gustav Imam, who was the coordinator of the project in India, who's been working at this cooperative that allows, kind of helps women continue this tribal art and actually kind of save the region they were living in, because it was going to be destroyed by the mining industry. And then some people intervened and showed that actually this region had historical, you know, artifacts that meant it had to be protected. And so it happened, and thanks to that, we had the honor and the privilege to actually host 3 of these artists. And interestingly enough, when Greg and Christine started to talk with the artists were thinking, well, we are going to do something closer to the scale of the art we do at home, which is based on the paintings we do in our houses. So we're going to do, you know, 4 panels, 4 by 8 or 6 by 4 foot or something. And then Greg and Christine say, well, wait a minute, they saw the space. They said, no,
Large space.
we need to speak to them because, you know, we need to fill this space. And I was like, okay, they're not expecting to that. We should rather tell them before they arrive. So we called Gustav, and he said, fine, but let me bring a 3rd artist, because only 2 people, you know, and even 3 people in 10 days, all that was quite phenomenal. So there's 2 styles presented here. So the style in color, and I'm just looking at my notes, I haven't been to the galleries for like, you know, weeks and weeks, so I'll try to forget. But the Sorai art is the Sorai style, the Avers art. That's the one in color that we have here. And then the other panel we see, black and white, the cover art. It's for the marriage art. One thing is we prepared the canvas, blank canvas here. We built the walls, and then we had to buy the different earth pigments here in Canada, because there's these regulations where you're not allowed to bring earth from other countries for fear of different, you know, parasites or things like that. So they worked a lot with our colleagues from conservation, with Patrick Gauthier, with Geneviève Saunier, and we sent them, Patrick kind of sent them, you know, websites of local suppliers, and they kind of picked up the colors, and then they worked with Patrick here. Someone asked a question earlier about the pigment, and Patrick got back to me in between. So the question was, did they find the pigments different from the one they were using in India? And yes, indeed they did, because actually the pigment we had here was way finer, so, you know, not that regular. I mean, very regular and very smooth. And for the Kovar painting that we're going to see, they've actually added some earth, some soil from outside to add some texture to it.
So just to elaborate on the 2 styles that Serge mentioned, the Kovar and Sorai. Sorai, I believe, is for harvest?
Harvest, yeah. So these are the harvest. style. And these are paintings that during harvest they would do in their villages on the walls of houses and walls of their villages. And then the cover mariage art is here in black and white. What was very special about this black and white part, and it was the last panel they did, and they were the three of them were working on it, is so one night they painted the whole panel black, and the day after they brought the white, and before the white would dry, they would take this piece of tools, this wood, to kind of scratch the white surface to expose the black surface, and that's how you see these black lines. So that's how you see how beautiful textured it is, because basically the scrapping is based on the type of piece of wood and tool they use, and that's what you get. Of course, you need to work fast because you need to work before the white is dry. One thing that was very extraordinary is they did not prepare. I didn't see any sketches of their work beforehand, and I don't think I asked the curators, and they did not. They knew they knew what they were going for, because these artists have already, their work is known and they've shown internationally. But they just went here and they arrived in the morning and started to paint, and didn't even do little layout in pencil before, except for sometimes little parts, but the rest they just would go very quietly and very gently, and they would just paint freehand, and then it fits perfectly in the panel. You don't have one part which at the end is like super small, super big, because they would have, no, it's all very regular, very proportionate, which is interesting. One other thing which was great is, so they paint during the working hours during the day. So you had visitors who were sitting and looking at them. You know how frantic an exhibition installation is getting, especially 10 days before the opening. What was great of having them here is actually the serenity that they had doing the work kind of like helped us, calmed us a bit, because first of all, if I would rush to go to see Yor over there, the minute I would go here, I would slow down, because they were working, so you don't want to kind of like create havoc. And just by slowing down, and then they're like painting and smiling, and you say hi to them, wow, you would arrive to your project totally relaxed and back and forth. So it was actually a fantastic experience for everybody, and for the visitors, and for us, and I think for them also. I think they really liked painting that scale, because it's not something they've ever done. They were a bit at the beginning, because this is very big, so we installed some scaffolding for them, but they just, they finished on time, they didn't have to do all-nighters or anything. It was perfect. And they even had the chance to see some snow, yes, which they hadn't seen. And the last day, I think it was one of the last days they saw the snow, which was quite a good experience. So we're arriving in Milan. That is going to show the label of the work.
There we are. Okay.
So we're arriving. You see the work called Eke. Well, in French I say Aka. So Aka also, it's a Maori word which means vine, and it's an artwork by Mata Ao Collective. It's a collective of 4 Maori women artists: Irina Baker, Sarah Hudson, Bridget Ureti, Terry Tao. They are individually also artists, each of them, but they have created this collective where they do this work. So it's inspired by traditional Maori weaving, but of course in a contemporary scale and contemporary way. When I was working on that, so these again didn't exist 6 months before the opening, and obviously they started to weave in New Zealand, which I just read. They had the warehouse of a boiler room. They needed 12 meters high, to be able to suspend everything. Mm-hmm. And it was a boiler room used by volcanologists from the Patterson university in New Zealand. So I don't know. I thought this volcanologist, the volcanologist association, I thought that was very interesting. So I mean, this piece is for you to look up, to follow this vine and to look up. We ordered, just to talk about production, we ordered 3 kilometers of this thick rope of 25 millimeters diameters and 5 kilometers of this thin one. If you live in Ottawa, 3 kilometers would be, you would unroll the rope from the gallery here, go all the way up to Elgin, to St. Catherine Street and the 417. So it's just to tell you the quantity of rope we got. It's marine rope, and it's marine rope, so the color is quite standard. That's what you get in New Zealand. They saw this rope in Honolulu while participating at the Honolulu Biennale, I think. And they had to, so they had to find a space similar in height of what they would get here. And we worked back and forth. We did some, Skype call together. We talked with their engineers, because their engineers had to certify that the metal ring that has all the ropes above had the proper dimensions, and the attachment of the ring to the cable also. And then their engineers talked to engineers that was coordinated by our colleague Nick Assista, about the facility planning management, whose engineers had to certify that you could install this artwork without having the building falling down. And it is successful. It's been up for 6 months and there's no issue. But it was quite something. And you want the work to be ready for the opening, but it's coming from New Zealand. So, even though we were opening in early November, I had the work shipped and arrived here early October. And then they arrived like 2 weeks before the opening, and they only had like 2 meters to finish weaving. And interesting enough, actually, the 4 of them were weaving from inside while we were open to the public. And sometimes you would have visitors walking and being totally startled because they would realize they would hear people talking in between here in the room. But again, it was a very quite meditative work, even though it's a super hard work, because actually weaving this rope, it's actually quite, so they had these gloves and they would put protection on their hands, but even that, the hands were quite damaged after weaving all this. And the whole exercise was unfolding it from the crate. There was a gigantic crate, and the whole piece was folded. And then having our team, with a chain link thing, installing everything up, and having the artist making sure, the rope was staying vertical, that the type of thread they did kept the dimension. I mean, a very, very precise work. Quite incredible, actually. And and I think they were very happy. And again, in terms of connection, what happened thanks to this project is you had Sami artists meeting artists from India, meeting artists from New Zealand, meeting artists. I mean, the discussion and the encounters that happened were just incredible. And then the discussion and the kind of privilege for us to work with these artists on site was also something very strong, and I think it has really built some very, very strong link between all of us, and we all love this artist. And and we're also grateful to Christine Lalonde, to Greg Hill, to Rachel Dickinson, to Crystal Migwen, and to Sasha to bring us into this magnificent and tumultuous project.
You have a couple of questions.
You have a couple of questions? Okay.
We do. And just so you know, Mata Aho Collective is watching us right now.
Oh, great. Hi, everybody. It's very early for them.
Yeah, that's right, eh?
Yeah.
Someone asked, how much does it weigh? And then Mata Aho Collective answered, it weighs almost a ton.
Yeah, that's true.
But,
which in a way is not, which in the way it sounds heavy, It is, but it's not so heavy because it's it's a ton divided by 8 cables, so we're
Right.
good.
We're good.
Yeah.
But a question that you might be able to answer is how long, KT Munich is asking how long will it be displayed, this work?
Yeah, so actually this work is entering the permanent collection of the gallery and will be on display until February, March of 2021.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
And those were the only questions
Okay.
that we had. A lot of good comments though. People are really happy to see the works and a lot of people miss the gallery and can't wait to come visit us. So thank you everyone for tuning in.
Thank you thank you everybody. And so stay connected for the next virtual tours.
Next Saturday, French at 1 o'clock and English at 3 p.m.
And thank you, Mylan. Thank you, Cathy, for the comments. Thank you, Andrea Gumper in the Education Department for organizing all that with Gary. And I think it's great. For us, it's great because we're finally allowed to step in the gallery, even if it's just an afternoon. And it's fantastic to be able to share this work with visitors.
Thank you, Sels, for the tour.
Thank you. Bye.
Before we leave, I'll just show the label very quickly.
So that is the title of the collective, Mata Aho Collective. Aka is the title of the work. And some information there for you folks. Thank you for tuning in.